It was exactly 12:04 in the morning. Inside Finnegan's Pub in Stockton, California, a security camera caught a young woman in a brown and white striped top. She's laughing, chatting with a group of people around her. She looks relaxed, happy, safe. It's just another Saturday night. At 12:07 a.m., something changes. A man appears from behind her. He's wearing a backwards baseball cap and has a goatee. Without warning, he puts his arm around her waist. The gesture is familiar. Too familiar. She steps away. Quickly. Her body language shifts completely. She rushes into the bathroom, away from him. The camera captures it all. An hour passes. The bar is closing down. Outside Finnegan's, another camera picks up movement near the entrance. It's the same young woman in the striped top. She's talking to a different man now. Her hands are moving, animated. She looks upset. The conversation is intense. According to the timestamp, it's around 1:09 in the morning. At 1:13 a.m., she says goodbye to her friends. She walks out of frame, and then she vanishes. And that's where a young woman's life was stolen. So who was the young woman in the brown and white striped top?
Police have found what could be a link to a missing 23-year-old woman. Dalene Carlson disappeared on August 7th, and for the past 2 days, rescuers have focused their search at the Calaveras River.
Before we continue, don't forget to like this video. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss any coverage in this channel. Her name was Dalene Carlson. She was 23 years old. Just a few weeks earlier, around July 19, 2011, Dalene had moved to Stockton, California, from a small town in Idaho. She was staying with her Aunt Maggie and her cousin Cecily. The plan was simple: find a job, enroll in college, start a new chapter. Dalene had her whole life ahead of her. Detective Brad Burrell, the lead investigator who would later work her case, described her this way: all-American girl, intelligent, attractive, with a very bright future. She wasn't just a statistic. She was a real person with real dreams. Dalene was close with her cousin Cecily. The two of them had been spending the summer together. Cecily was showing Dalene around town, introducing her to the local social scene, helping her get comfortable in her new surroundings. For Dalene, who was still finding her footing in a new city, Cecily was her guide, her friend. On the evening of August 6, 2011, the two cousins made plans to go out together. They were going to hit Finnegan's Pub, meet up with friends, enjoy a Saturday night, but then Cecily came down with a fever. She felt terrible. She had to stay home. Dalene could have stayed home too. She could have called it a night, but she was young. She wanted to go out. She wanted to meet people, make friends, experience her new city. Before she left, she made a promise to her Aunt Maggie. She looked her in the eye and said she'd be home by 1 a.m., no later. Dalene spent time getting ready. She applied her makeup carefully, picked out her outfit, the brown and white striped top. She was nervous about fitting in with new classmates and new faces. But she was also excited. She left the house alone that night. She walked out the door with her whole future waiting for her. College classes to attend, a career to build, friends to make, a life to live. But Dalene Carlson would never come home. She would never walk back through that door. She would never see her Aunt Maggie again. She would never start college. She would never get the chance to build the life she had moved to Stockton to create. Because somewhere between leaving Finnegan's Pub at 1:13 a.m. and the sun rising the next morning, everything went horribly, tragically wrong. And the man in the backwards baseball cap, the one who made her so uncomfortable that she rushed into a bathroom to get away from him, he would become the center of one of the most disturbing investigations Stockton, California had ever seen. Dalene arrived at Finnegan's Pub around midnight. Inside, the bar was packed, music playing, people talking and laughing. She blended into the crowd. According to the security footage, she was socializing, drinking. She appeared happy. This was exactly what she'd hoped for: a normal night out in her new city. But at 12:07 a.m., something happened that investigators would later call the first red flag. A man approached her from behind. His name was Jason Gilley. He was 25 years old and known in the local social circle as a frequent party host. According to police, Dalene had only known him for about 1 week. On the surveillance footage, you can see him put his arm around her waist. The touch is uninvited, possessive. Dalene's reaction is immediate. She pulls away, steps back, and rushes into the bathroom. Investigators who reviewed this footage later said her visible discomfort was significant. She didn't want him touching her. She needed space. While inside the bathroom, Dalene pulled out her phone. She sent a text message to someone identified in reports as James. The message mentioned going to a party after the bar closed. She wanted to keep the night going. Around 1:09 a.m., cameras outside Finnegan's captured another moment. Dalene was talking to a different man near the entrance. Her hands were moving. She looked upset. So did he. The man was Jacob Evangelisti. He was her boyfriend, or rather, her ex-boyfriend. Because according to what investigators later learned, Dalene broke up with him right there, outside the bar, in front of everyone. In true crime cases, a rejected partner almost always becomes a person of interest. Breakups can trigger anger, jealousy, violence. But the surveillance footage was about to point investigators in a completely different direction. At 1:13 a.m., Dalene said goodbye to her friends outside Finnegan's. She walked out of frame, and then, for 18 minutes, she disappeared. No camera picked her up, not on the street, not at nearby businesses, nowhere. Detective Brad Burrell knew those 18 minutes were critical. Where did she go? Who was she with? He started checking every business in the area that had security cameras, 24 locations in total. One by one, he requested footage. One by one, he reviewed the recordings. And then he found her. At 1:33 a.m., a camera inside Food 4 Less grocery store captured Dalene walking through the entrance. She was still in her brown and white striped top, but she wasn't alone. Jason Gilley was with her, the man from the bar, the one who had made her so uncomfortable just over an hour earlier. His arm was draped around her shoulders as they moved through the aisles. They were shopping, picking up alcohol. A receipt later recovered from Gilley's garage confirmed what they bought. Jägermeister, 2 Monster energy drinks. At 1:41 a.m., the exterior cameras captured them leaving the store together, side by side, his face clearly visible in the light. That was the last confirmed sighting of Dalene Carlson alive. But the story doesn't end there. According to Jacob Evangelisti, the ex-boyfriend, Dalene called him 9 times that night. The calls came from Jason Gilley's residence. She was asking if she could come over to Jacob's apartment. Jacob said yes, but Dalene insisted she would walk there by herself. She didn't want a ride. She said she'd be there soon. She never arrived. Jacob waited. He called her back. No answer. He texted. Nothing. By the time the sun came up on August 7th, 2011, Dalene Carlson had vanished. Her Aunt Maggie started calling her phone, over and over. No response. She sent text after text. Still nothing. Hours turned into a full day. Maggie's worry turned into panic. At 11:30 p.m. on August 7th, exactly 24 hours after Dalene was supposed to be home, Maggie reported her niece missing, and that's when detectives started asking the hard questions. Where did Dalene and Jason go after leaving Food 4 Less? What happened during those missing hours? And why was Jason Gilley about to tell investigators a series of lies that would completely fall apart? When Dalene didn't come home that night, her Aunt Maggie didn't panic right away. Maybe she stayed at a friend's place. Maybe her phone died. Young people do that sometimes. But as the hours passed, Maggie's concern grew. She called Dalene's phone. No answer. She texted. Nothing. She called again. And again. By 11:30 p.m. on August 7th, exactly 24 hours after Dalene was supposed to walk through the door, Maggie knew something was terribly wrong. She reported her niece missing. Detectives with the Stockton Police Department immediately began interviewing people who had seen Dalene that night. Friends from the bar, acquaintances, anyone who might know where she went. One of those people was Jason Gilley. When detectives first sat down with him, Jason had a very clear story. He said yes, he was at Finnegan's pub that night. He saw Dalene there. He even offered to give her a ride home, but she declined. According to Jason, he left the bar alone around 1 a.m. He went straight home to take care of his sick brother. His grandmother could confirm it. He was home by 1:30 a.m. Simple, straightforward, verifiable. Except it wasn't true. Detective Brad Burrell had already started reviewing surveillance footage from businesses near Finnegan's, and when he checked the cameras at Food 4 Less, he found something Jason didn't expect anyone to see. Dalene and Jason, together, shopping, at 1:33 a.m. There was no way Jason could have been home by 1:30 if he was still at a grocery store at 1:33. Detectives brought Jason back in for a second interrogation. This time, they didn't rush. They let him sit in the interrogation room for a full hour. No phone, no distractions, just Jason and his thoughts. Just Jason wondering what the police knew. When the detective finally walked in, he asked Jason to go through his timeline again, step by step, minute by minute. Jason stuck to his story. He said he left the bar around 1 a.m., went straight home, was there by 1:20 or 1:30. The detective listened, didn't interrupt, just let Jason talk. And then he said something that changed everything. That's the good thing with surveillance video. The cameras know a lot more of what's going on. According to the interrogation transcript, Jason's face went pale. The color drained. He knew he'd been caught. He broke down, started crying, and admitted he lied. Now Jason had a second story. Yes, he left Finnegan's with Dalene. Yes, they went to Food 4 Less together. They bought alcohol. Then they went back to his place. According to Jason, they had sex. They hung out for a little while, but then they got into an argument. Dalene wanted to leave. So Jason drove her home early Sunday morning. He said she got out of the car, walked toward the front door of her aunt's house, and that was the last time he saw her. He drove away. End of story. The detectives weren't buying it. They leaned in, pressed harder, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Jason, where are we going to find her body? Jason shook his head. He insisted he didn't do anything to her. He dropped her off. She walked away. That's all he knew. But here's the problem with Jason's second story. It still didn't add up. If he dropped Dalene off at her aunt's house, why didn't she ever go inside? Why didn't Maggie see her? Why did Dalene call her ex-boyfriend Jacob 9 times from Jason's residence, saying she wanted to come over but never show up? And if Jason really just dropped her off and drove away, why did he lie about it in the first place? Innocent people don't lie to police about their whereabouts during a missing person investigation. They don't change their story when confronted with evidence. They don't sit in an interrogation room and cry when surveillance footage proves they weren't where they claimed to be. Detectives knew Jason was hiding something, but without physical evidence, without a body, they couldn't prove what really happened that night. So they did what good investigators do. They kept digging. This case shows how crucial surveillance footage can be in exposing lies. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, hit the like button. It helps us bring you more detailed case analyses. Because the cameras weren't done telling their story, there was one more piece of footage that would blow Jason's lies wide open. And it would come from a gas station at the southern edge of Stockton, recorded just hours after Dalene disappeared. Detective Brad Burrell wasn't done. He knew Jason's story didn't make sense, so he kept searching for answers. He spent hours reviewing surveillance footage from every gas station along the routes between Jason's house and Dalene's aunt's home. One station after another, frame by frame, timestamp by timestamp. 6 hours into the search, he found something. At 11:03 a.m. on August 7th, nearly 9.5 hours after Jason and Dalene left Food 4 Less together, a silver sedan pulled into a gas station at the southern edge of Stockton. It was Jason's car. Detective Burrell leaned closer to the screen, watched carefully. Jason got out of the driver's seat. But he wasn't the same clean-cut guy from the bar footage. His clothes were visibly dirty, stained. He looked disheveled, exhausted, like he'd been awake all night doing something physically demanding. He pumped gas, normal enough. Then he walked back to the driver's seat and sat down. But then something strange happened. Suddenly, Jason got back out of the car. He walked around to the passenger side, opened the door, leaned in, examined something closely, and then he slammed the door shut, hard, with unusual force, like he was frustrated, like something wasn't working right. He got back in the car and drove away. He was alone. Detective Burrell replayed the footage, watched it again and again. That moment when Jason checked the passenger door kept standing out. Why would someone do that? Why would you get out of your car, walk around to the passenger side, and violently slam the door? Detective Burrell later explained his theory. He believed the door wasn't closing properly, and he believed he knew why. I believe Jason has driven her out to one of the fields somewhere south of Stockton, Detective Burrell said, aggressively removed her from the car with such haste that the front passenger door didn't close properly. Think about that for a moment. If someone was forced out of a car, pulled, dragged, shoved, the door could easily be damaged in the struggle. The latch could bend. The hinges could shift. It might not close right anymore. And if you're trying to cover up what you've done, a broken passenger door is a problem. It's evidence. It's something people will notice. The gas station footage showed Jason trying to fix it, trying to make it close, getting frustrated when it wouldn't. But here's the harsh reality of criminal investigations. Belief isn't proof. Detective Burrell believed Jason had done something terrible to Dalene. The surveillance footage suggested guilt. The lies suggested guilt. The dirty clothes and the broken door and the exhausted appearance all suggested guilt. But suggesting isn't the same as proving. Without physical evidence, without a body, without concrete proof of a crime, prosecutors couldn't charge Jason with murder. They couldn't even hold him. So despite everything detectives suspected, despite all the red flags and inconsistencies and damning footage, Jason Gilley remained free. He walked out of the police station, got in his car, went home, and for weeks it seemed like he might actually get away with it. Dalene's family was devastated. They printed flyers with her face on them, organized search parties, walked through parks and alleys and abandoned buildings, calling her name, hoping for a miracle. But deep down, they knew. Maggie knew. Cecily knew. The detectives knew. Dalene wasn't coming home. The question wasn't whether she was alive. The question was where Jason had left her body, and whether investigators would ever be able to find it. August turned into September. September turned into October. Maggie kept calling Dalene's phone, every day, sometimes multiple times a day. She knew no one would answer, but she couldn't stop herself. Hearing the ringtone felt like holding on to hope, even when hope was gone. The case was going cold. And then, in late October of 2011, nearly 3 months after Dalene vanished, a farmer was working his cornfield roughly 20 miles south of Stockton. He was moving through the rows when he saw something that didn't belong, partially hidden by vegetation, partially covered by dirt and time. Human remains. The farmer immediately called police. Investigators rushed to the scene. They carefully documented everything, photographed the area, collected evidence. It didn't take long to confirm what everyone had feared. The remains belonged to Dalene Carlson. She had been shot. According to the pathologist's report, there were 3 gunshot wounds, 1 to the back of her head, 2 to her abdomen. The shot to the back of the head was execution style, deliberate, cold-blooded. Scattered around the scene, investigators found several .22 caliber shell casings, small bullets, the kind used in handguns. The cause of death was clear. This was murder. In an instant, the case shifted. It was no longer a missing person investigation. It was a homicide. And detectives had a suspect who had lied repeatedly, a suspect who had been caught on camera with the victim, a suspect whose car had been seen at a gas station with a broken passenger door just hours after Dalene disappeared. Now all they needed was the murder weapon. Because if they could connect Jason Gilley to the gun that fired those .22 caliber bullets, and they could finally bring him to justice. And as it turned out, that connection was closer than anyone expected. With Dalene's body recovered and cause of death confirmed, prosecutors finally had proof that a crime had been committed. But they still needed one critical piece of evidence: the gun. They had the shell casings from the cornfield, .22 caliber. But without the actual weapon, they couldn't definitively tie Jason Gilley to the murder. Then they got a break. A young man contacted the police with information. According to court records, he told detectives that Jason Gilley possessed an unregistered .22 caliber handgun, and he knew where it might be found. Police moved quickly. They recovered the weapon and sent it straight to the state crime lab for ballistics testing. Ballistics experts fired test rounds from the gun. Then they compared the markings on those bullets and casings to the ones found at the crime scene. Every gun leaves unique marks on the bullets and casings it fires. Tiny scratches and grooves, like a fingerprint. The results came back. It was a match. The gun that had been recovered was the same gun that fired the bullets that killed Dalene Carlson. There was no doubt. And that gun belonged to Jason Gilley. According to earlier reports, the weapon was actually an heirloom. Jason's uncle had lent it to him for target shooting sometime before Dalene disappeared. It was a family gun, passed down, and Jason had used it to take a life. But prosecutors had even more evidence: cell phone data. According to prosecutors, tower records placed Jason's phone at the cornfield location around the time Dalene was killed. He wasn't just connected to the weapon, he was connected to the scene, the lies, the surveillance footage, the gas station behavior, the gun, the cell phone data. It all pointed to one person: Jason Ross Gilley. On a Thursday morning in late October 2011, police arrested Jason for the second time. But this time, the charges were different. First-degree murder, kidnapping, false imprisonment. This time, he wouldn't be released. This time, prosecutors had everything they needed. Jason was taken into custody and held without bail. The case that had seemed impossible to solve just weeks earlier was now airtight. Dalene's family finally had answers. Not the answers they wanted, not the outcome they prayed for, but answers. They knew what happened to her. They knew who did it, and they knew he would face justice. But the legal process was just beginning. Jason would have his day in court, and prosecutors would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty of taking Dalene Carlson's life. The trial was set, and the whole story, every lie, every piece of footage, every shell casing, would be laid out in front of a jury. Prosecutors made a decision early on. They would not seek the death penalty. Instead, They would pursue life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial began on April 8, 2013, nearly 2 years after Dalene disappeared. The prosecution's case was built on a timeline constructed entirely from surveillance footage, witness testimony, and physical evidence. They showed the jury the footage from Finnegan's pub. 12:07 a.m., Jason approaching Dalene from behind. His arm around her waist, her immediate discomfort, the way she pulled away and rushed into the bathroom. They showed the Food 4 Less footage. 1:33 a.m., Dalene and Jason shopping together, buying alcohol, leaving at 1:41 a.m. This was critical, because Jason had told detectives he left the bar alone and was home by 1:30 a.m., but the cameras proved he was lying. He was still out with Dalene well after that. They showed the gas station footage. 11:03 a.m., Jason alone, dirty clothes, disheveled appearance, checking the passenger door, slamming it shut with force. Then came the ballistics evidence. The .22 caliber shell casings found at the crime scene matched the gun recovered from Jason. The state crime lab confirmed it. This was the murder weapon, and it belonged to him. Cell tower data placed Jason's phone at the cornfield location. Prosecutors argued he drove Dalene there, shot her, left her body hidden in the vegetation, and drove away. And then there were Jason's lies, his constantly changing stories. First, he said he left the bar alone. Then he admitted leaving with Dalene but claimed he dropped her off safely. Each time detectives confronted him with evidence, his story shifted. The defense tried to fight back. They argued the encounter between Jason and Dalene was consensual. They attempted to paint Dalene's choices that night as reckless, going out alone, drinking, leaving with someone she barely knew. But the evidence was overwhelming. The defense couldn't explain away the surveillance footage. They couldn't explain the ballistics match. They couldn't explain why Jason lied repeatedly if he had nothing to hide. The jury heard everything. 12 people listened to weeks of testimony, reviewed hours of footage, examined the physical evidence. When it was time to deliberate, they didn't take long. Less than 1 full day. On October 2, 2013, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty, first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent. Dalene's family wept. Jason showed no emotion. Sentencing came on November 4, 2013. The judge sentenced Jason Gilley to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On top of that, he received 25 years to life for the firearm enhancement. Jason would never walk free again. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Before the judge finished, and Dalene's family was given the chance to speak. Maggie stood up, the aunt who had taken Dalene in, the aunt who spent that entire night calling Dalene's phone over and over, hoping for an answer that never came. Cecily spoke too, the cousin who had been too sick to go out that night, the cousin who carried guilt, wondering if things would have been different if she'd been there. One family member's statement was simple but powerful. Dalene didn't deserve anything that happened to her, not one bit of it. Jason's defense team filed appeals. They tried to challenge the conviction, argued procedural errors, claimed the evidence wasn't sufficient. In 2017, the appeals were denied. The conviction stood. Jason Gilley remains in prison today, and he will stay there for the rest of his life, but no sentence, no matter how long, could ever bring Dalene back. Jason Gilley has never provided a full account of that night. He's never explained why he did what he did. He's never shown remorse, but the evidence speaks for itself. The surveillance footage, the ballistics, the cell tower data, the lies. All of it points to one conclusion. Jason Gilley murdered Dalene Carlson, and he tried to get away with it. This case demonstrates something important about modern criminal investigations. Surveillance cameras have become silent witnesses. They watch, they record, and they never forget. They never lie. They never change their stories. They don't get confused about timelines or second-guess what they saw. Jason Gilley thought he could control the narrative. He thought he could lie his way out of suspicion. Technology and determined detective work brought justice. Without those cameras, Jason might have gotten away with murder. Without Detective Burrell's refusal to give up, the case might have gone cold. But here's the hard truth. Surveillance footage can solve crimes. It can expose lies. It can put killers behind bars. But it can't bring victims back. It couldn't save Dalene. It couldn't stop what happened to her in that cornfield. It couldn't give her the future she deserved. All it could do was make sure the person responsible didn't walk free. And in the end, that's what justice looks like. Not perfect, not enough, but something. Before we go any further, let's be absolutely clear about something. This case is not about what Dalene did wrong, because she did nothing wrong. The responsibility for what happened lies entirely with Jason Gilley. He made the choice to take a life. He's the one sitting in prison. He's the one who deserves blame. But there are practical steps that might have changed the outcome, not because Dalene failed, but because predators look for opportunities, and reducing those opportunities can save lives. When Dalene texted someone about going to a party after the bar, she didn't specify whose party or where it was. That's normal. Most people don't think they need to share every detail. Her friends saw her leave Finnegan's, but they didn't know she was leaving with Jason. They didn't know where she was going. If something had gone differently, if someone had known exactly who she was with and where she was headed, maybe they could have checked on her sooner. Maybe they could have raised the alarm earlier. Today, there are tools that make this easier. Share your live location through phone apps with trusted contacts, parents, close friends, roommates, people who will notice if something's off. If you're getting in someone's car, especially someone you don't know well, send a photo to a friend. Include the license plate if you can. It takes 5 seconds, but it creates a record. Check in regularly with specific details, not just, I'm fine. Say where you are, who you're with, when you'll be home. Make sure multiple people know your plans, not because you're paranoid, but because predators rely on anonymity. They rely on victims being isolated. They rely on no one knowing where to look. When those things are taken away, when someone knows exactly who you're with and where you are, it changes the equation. It makes it harder for someone to hurt you and get away with it. These aren't guarantees, nothing is. But they're tools, practical tools that can help. This isn't victim blaming. Dalene didn't cause what happened to her. Jason did. But if sharing these lessons helps even one person stay safer, then it's worth saying. Dalene Carlson was more than a true crime case. She was more than surveillance footage and court transcripts and evidence photos. She was someone's niece, someone's cousin, someone's friend. She had dreams, real dreams. She wanted to finish college, build a career, make a life for herself in Stockton. She was excited about her future, nervous but excited. She moved to California with hope, with plans, with her whole life stretching out in front of her. Jason Gilley took all of that away in a cornfield south of town on an August night in 2011. Justice was served. He was convicted, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will never walk free. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars, exactly where he belongs. But justice is cold comfort to a family with an empty chair at every holiday dinner, every birthday, every family gathering. Maggie, Dalene's aunt, said something after the trial that stays with you. It's not that you get over anything, but what really helps in the healing is remembering the good times, remembering everything that was good when she was alive. Dalene rests in peace now. Her suffering is over, but her memory lives on with the people who loved her. The cameras that captured her last night alive became instruments of justice. They spoke for a victim who could no longer speak for herself. Frame by frame, timestamp by timestamp, they told the truth when a killer tried to hide it. And because of that, Dalene got justice. Not the ending anyone wanted, but justice. If this case affected you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. And if you want to see more in-depth true crime breakdowns like this one, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and please keep Dalene's family in your thoughts.